What's up, everybody? Welcome to the HOJ-Cast, episode number 10. And today I've got another 9-pack of topics for you, and I'm just going to dive right in. I've split it into two parts. First, I have 3 card-related topics, then I have 6 sports-related topics. So let's start with the card topics. First of all, we have a success. We have a Mailday success. I don't know if you guys remember. Some of you may have seen my little video where I went through sort of the buying process and the decision to buy this card. And I bought it, and it arrived very quickly from overseas. Just took a few days to get here, and everything went smoothly. And I'm very happy with how that card turned out. Go check out that. That was a Chris HOJ-Cast from a few episodes ago if you want to hear a little bit more, learn a little bit more about that card. And then my second topic, I have another Mailday that I'm like to talk about. And then I'm going to follow it up with some more content. So if you didn't watch Chris HOJ-Cast number 9, which I understand is very dense and not very, it doesn't really have a lot of viral potential. It's like an encyclopedia of Mahomes's rookie year mem auto cards. But if you're into that type of stuff, and also if you sort of are interested in cataloging and classifying cards, I think I think you would enjoy watching that episode a lot. But just it's very dense. It's very dense content. But anyway, that's HOJ-Cast episode 9, where I go through every Mahomes mem autograph card from his rookie year. There's 51. And then there was something like 225-ish parallels. So like 4 to 5 parallels per each. And like everything is covered. And they're ranked based on their market value in a mintish grade. So if that interests you, go check out HOJ-Cast episode 9. And then I teased briefly in the middle of that video that one of the reasons, the main reason why I was doing that content, and really more so doing that research, which I then turned into content, was because I was researching for this purchase, which I have made. I'm like a weatherman trying to line things up here to the camera. But this is a card that I picked up quite recently. And it is the 2017 Vertex Capstones, card number 104, memorabilia autograph. It actually takes 3 patches in 3 of the mem windows, and then a tag as well. And it's autographed, and it's a 1 of 1, and it's the only 1 of 1 from that particular product. And it's a pretty neat product, not only because I think it looks cool, but also it's the first year and the last year of Vertex as a standalone product. So it's sort of got that extra level of rarity, and it certainly won't ever be iconic, not in the same way that NT and Flawless and Immaculate are, some of these other brands, because nobody else is really getting these. It got retired into like Chronicles, basically, and yeah, it just had this 1 year as a standalone for Mahomes. But I like that. I like that it's more rare, a little more obscure for that reason. And obviously, I think that the thing that initially drew me to it was just how beautiful the card is. I think it's a really stunning card. So I'm super excited about this Mailday. It's an amazing addition to the growing Mahomes collection, and that's going to lead me into breaking down here on a much simpler level some of the research that really led me to have the conviction to pull the trigger on this card after deciding that, I found it was beautiful and I really liked it. And that was, I started from a very comprehensive approach. I laid out every Mahomes memorabilia autograph card. Really, I laid out every Mahomes card, period. I have a spreadsheet where I've created a record of every Mahomes card, period, from his 2017 season. And then within it, I said, I really need to analyze what is the full offering of memorabilia autograph cards and where might this card sit in that offering. And then once I've decided where it sits, does the price make sense? And is it something that, I'm interested in and I can afford? How does it fit into my Mahomes collection, and how excited about it am I? And as I did more research, I just got more and more excited. So let me walk you through some of the fruits of that research. So Mahomes has 18 true base set mem auto cards, and true is a word that I don't love to use there, but all it really means is first appearing base set mem auto cards. A few of the products, Mahomes appears several times in the base set, so I'm only looking at the first appearance. His first appearance in these base sets mem auto cards. And he has 18. He has 18 of them. And I ranked them in HOJ-Cast 9 according to their card ladder value in the grade of BGS 9 or PSA 8, depending on which one had more recently sold. And I'm not saying that ranking is definitive of value or anything like that. It was just a way for me to sort of approximate, roughly estimate where these cards rank. And like in a lot of these rankings, these cards are like sometimes a few bucks apart from each other. So yeah, these rankings are loose. They're not set in stone by any means. But anyway, of the 18, here were the 3 most affordable. Were the this First Impressions from Illusions, which is one of only 2 that didn't get a serial number. And you'll notice too, all of them should have the rookie card badge, as Panini in 2017 was careful to put the rookie card badge on base set rookie year cards. And so you'll see that they all should have the rookie card badge. But yeah, this Illusions, and then this Gold Standard, and then this Neophyte Calligraphy from Pantheon. Those were, we'll just call that the 4th tier, the cards 16, 17, and 18 in the rankings. And then we'll get to the 3rd tier here, which also we've got Spectra, we've got Absolute, Unparalleled, Certified, and Preferred. And the list already is starting to get interesting here. I happen to really like the way the Unparalleled mem auto card looks here, and some people don't, but I do. I like the way it looks. And you know, it has a sticker autograph. I'm not as against that as some other people are. My brother has an amazing collection of cards with sticker autographs that was tastefully chosen. So it can be done. You can definitely make a great collection with sticker autograph cards. So I'm not totally against it, but it is a little bit of a turnoff considering that there are alternatives that are on card. But you know, one thing is interesting: the previous 3 were all sticker autographs in tier 4, and then now we're here in tier 3. 4 of the 5 here in tier 3 have sticker autographs. The one that doesn't is the Preferred, which I just so happen to think is a really sharp looking card too. None of the mem windows are impressive on the 2 that I like. The Preferred is just a 1-color jersey piece. The Unparalleled is just 1 color too. I'm not sure how much diversity of patch or memorabilia or jersey piece that you get on those 2. You can see the Spectra has taken a really nice patch in its memorabilia window, and the Certified one there's a 3rd color sneaking in there. It's a sneaky 3-color Certified, really cool brand. Not a huge fan of the Absolute, but it is cool that they sort of use the football as one of the memorabilia pieces. Kind of makes it unique and stand out. Its base set has 2 more, if memory serves, 2 more Mahomes cards in it, so that sort of convolutes it a little bit. This is the one I would focus on, even though it has fewer patch windows than the other 2 in the base set. And then yeah, the Preferred does stand out to me. I would probably, if I were interested in Preferred, I'd look at the parallels and maybe try to see if I could find something that had maybe a rarer version or something that had a really cool looking piece of memorabilia in it. Some of the autographs on the Preferred, I mean, Mahomes on-card autographs in general can get a little bit weak. Okay, so let's move on to tier 2. So here's the 2nd tier. There's a couple cards that sneak into the 2nd tier that surprised me, like Origins. I suppose Origins the brand is carrying it a bit because it's the other card within these 18 that didn't take a serial number. And the mem window, though, you do get some stitching. You do get a little bit of a patch here. And then the Certified Cuts was also surprised. I was surprised to see how high it sat in this category as well, just in terms of, remember, I just put these into tiers based on the card letter value of these cards in a roughly mint condition grade. It's a small memorabilia window, but it has a nice 3-color patch. I'm guessing some of these cards just got better memorabilia pieces than others on average, and this is probably one of them. And then Certified Cuts, right? So the autograph was signed on something else on a different piece of paper and then inserted into the card, and it is a pretty nice looking autograph. But not a huge fan of that one either, personally, just my personal taste. But here it is in tier 2. XR, just like Vertex, XR was a product that debuted with Mahomes, and there's only a few products that's true for. So it is kind of cool. You get multiple firsts stacked on top of each other. This is, as a quick side note, I've recorded multiple podcasts today. I've recorded a podcast with Josh and Brett of Stacking Slabs, and Josh obviously of Card Ladder and Crossover. And one of the things we were talking about was sort of firsts and stacking up firsts. And in that podcast, I was sort of thinking about this idea of like, well, look at all the firsts that you can stack up on a card like this XR, for example. We didn't talk about the XR, but the concept of stacking up firsts. And so you've got it's Mahomes' first professional season. It's the first year of XR. It's Mahomes' first appearance in XR. It's Mahomes' first card to appear in the base set of XR. And you start getting all these firsts stacking on top of each other. That kind of gets my collector brain excited. So that is cool. And we'll see here. The sticker autograph counts here. You've got 3, and then you've got a cut auto, and then you've got limited. So in the first 3 tiers, which include 13 cards, you either have cut or sticker autographs on all but 2 of them. So you had preferred on the previous slide, which was on card, and then here you have limited, which is on card. And I happen to think that limited is a really sharp looking card. That's another one where, I'd be really curious, like if its rarest version or a rarer parallel snuck out, I would be really interested in it. And then, so I would say that for preferred and for limited, I forget what the rarest parallel of each is, but if it's like a shield 1 of 1 or like a really nice looking, patch or tag or whatever, like if it's got like a really sharp 1 of 1 and it ever came out, I'd be interested. I think I'd definitely be interested. And then the plates and patches is nice looking too. I think they fill those patch windows typically with some really nice pieces, sticker autograph. Anyway, yeah, I go into way more depth on these in the HOJ-Cast 9 if you're interested. And then let's get to tier 1. And this part of the research sort of solidified the XR for me. So tier 1 here, we have the lowest in tier 1. There's 5 cards in tier 1. The least valuable is the Vertex. But it is in this tier. It is one of the 5 most valuable first appearing base set mem auto cards that Mahomes has. And the Vertex, that the 1 of 1 parallel to it, that I picked up, it's the only 1 of 1 to it. So I'm really excited about it. The research really bolstered how much how cool I think that card is. Ahead of it in the pricing, next was the Immaculate, the rookie patch autograph from Immaculate, and great brand, obviously. One of the Immaculate, Flawless, and NT. Those are, I think, widely regarded as the 3 most premium high-end brands and from the Panini era. And you might be wondering, well, speaking of Flawless, where is Flawless? And the reason why Flawless isn't on here is because in the Flawless product, the patch autographs are inserts. They do not appear in the base set. So that is why there is no Flawless here. But if you are interested to see where the Flawless inserts stack up, you can go check out HOJ-Cast number 9, and you will see there are several Mahomes Flawless inserts from his rookie season. You can see where those rank. So then it went Immaculate, then it went Encased, which was really surprising to me because Encased is not a brand that's ever really on my radar. Part of the thing that's doing a lot of the work is that its most common version in the base set is numbered to 25. So that's much rarer than, say, the Immaculate out of 99, the NT out of 99, the Vertex is out of 99. And then the second most valuable is the Impeccable. The Impeccable, which has 2 mem windows. The Vertex had 4. The Impeccable has 2, and then the other 3, Encased, Immaculate, and NT, have 1. The Impeccable was the second most valuable, and it's numbered to 75. So Impeccable and Encased are, they have fewer copies, and that sort of impacts some of the other tiers too. Some of the stuff had fewer copies, others have more, but 99 is sort of the standard, I suppose. That's the numbering that appears most often when you review the Mahomes rookie year offerings in mem autograph cards. And so, yeah, Impeccable, also a little bit surprised number 2 here, but it is, and you can see it's just a stunning card, and it has a dual shield 1 of 1. I believe one of the mem windows has a piece of a helmet, the other one has a piece from the jersey. So there's a dual shield floating around out there that's really nice. And then number 1 is obviously NT, and it's NT by a mile. So I believe that the value estimates worked out here was roughly the NT was 80,000, the impeccable was 10, the encased was 8, the immaculate was 7,000, and then the vertex was 6,000. I think that's roughly what it rounded to. So just a massive gap. Winner take all scenario here, where the NT, everything accumulates to the NT, and then everything else is just, well behind it. But to me, that is exciting. That creates some cool opportunities in some of these other cards. And sort of as I was looking at this and thinking about it, especially what's in this tier, encased is the one where I might not like it at its price. Even I'm not sure if I see encased as a brand that's in the tier with these others. But impeccable is neat. I'm not a huge fan of the impeccable brand either, but it's hard to resist that dual shield 1 of 1. That's certainly a card that it would be an amazing card to own. I think it's out of my price range because I've seen it for sale recently. And then but immaculate is especially like that. This immaculate with a shield 1 of 1 parallel to it with the hollow foil and everything that would come with that. That's a card that I just think is stunning. Certainly would be a card of interest, probably out of my range. And that's kind of how I land at the vertex. Like you can see on my vertex, you can see that there's no shield, which is a bit of a bummer. But it's also a bit of the reason why I'm not priced out of it, is because it takes no shield. It just takes 3 pretty cool, colorful patches, an on-card autograph, and then a little bit of the laundry tag, which is neat. That's plenty for me, and I find the eye appeal of the card to be pretty awesome. So that's why the card just kind of was right at my alley. A lot of stuff for it really worked. And then one last thing I'll notice here as we look at this tier 1 of Mahomes mem autos, they're all on card. So you can kind of see how we graduated from sticker autographs to once you get to the tier 1, they're all on card. Remember in tier 2, we just had the limited. So to just kind of recap, like the ones that really, really stand out to me are, I think preferred is nice. I think unparalleled and certified among the sticker autographs. I think those are the 2 nicest. Then when we get to the on cards, I preferred stands out to me. Limited is beautiful to me. Plates and patches is nice looking too for a sticker. But like limited and preferred are the on cards, and then vertex I obviously think is stunning. Immaculate I think is really, really nice. NT, don't need to say anything. Impeccable I obviously respect it a lot. It's just not quite. The eye appeal isn't quite there for me, and same for encased too. Okay, but that's really fun. I've had so much fun researching Mahomes cards. I may do a list, of just focus on his inserts next or something, or I might pivot to some of his other cards. But I have a few research projects going on right now, so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to come next. But all right, now let's get to the final topic that I want to get to with respect to sports card topics, and I'm going to display here this Pink Floyd album cover, and I think you'll see why I'm choosing it in a second. So I'm going to try and riff on this. The topic that I want to riff on is aesthetics versus rarity. And by aesthetics, what is meant is the subjective beauty of the card. I think some mean or intend to refer to this intersubjective beauty, or in other words, consensus that what most people think is beautiful, or even try to gesture in the direction of there being some sort of notion of objective beauty, if such a thing can exist. And so you have aesthetics, beauty, eye appeal, and then you contrast that against rarity. Rarity sort of being this idea of how elusive is the card, how difficult is it to acquire, how many copies exist. And rarity itself is a very slippery topic, because rarity is not as simple as there's just one of these, and so it's rarer than something else. It's really much more complicated than that, because to make the extreme example, suppose product was released that was all one of ones, and every player in that product had 1,000 different one of ones. Are those 1,000 one of ones any rarer than, by comparison, the 1996-97 Topps Chrome basketball product, which, let's assume for the sake of argument, had 1,000 refractors of each player? Are those 1,000 refractors more common or less rare than the 1,000 one of ones of the player that exists in that hypothetical product that I imagined? I think that's open for debate, and that speaks to the elusive, difficult, slippery nature of what rarity is. Rarity is a relational concept. Or think about, for example, the 1961 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain. And there's a PSA 10 of that's going to be coming to market soon, and that's why it's top of mind. And that card has a PSA 10 population, I believe, of 4. Let's just stipulate that it is 4. And there's several thousand others. Let's just stipulate to that being true also. So, is the PSA 10 a rarer version of that card? Can you say, I have a rare card, there are 4 of these, it is rare because there are only 4? Or do you have a card that has thousands of copies? Like, how are you conceiving of rarity? And then even within the 1961 Fleer, I believe there's a second Wilt Chamberlain card, an inaction card. And so then how does that factor into the calculus? And if that has PSA 10s, I don't know. But if that does, so rarity is very much a conceptual framework. And it's contingent upon how do we organize and classify things to establish their level of rarity. And so that's why I do look at and value things like when a card has just one of one parallel, also referred to as a one of one, or the only one of one. There's a level of rarity there that in my estimation is slightly different than when a card has 3 one of ones or 5 one of ones or something. But even within the one of ones, you can come up with ideas of which one has more significance, and then it's rarer to have something of more significance, and it's more common to have things of less significance. So significance actually builds on the rarity as well. So rarity versus aesthetics, okay, with those caveats about what rarity means having been laid down, so that we don't just think rarity is as simple as, well, there's just one of this. I mean, rarity is much more complicated. But this idea that and I've noticed this in my own collecting, that I've always been very high on aesthetics, but that was partially driven by collecting Michael Jordan 90s cards, especially when I first came back to collecting. And that's also what I collected as a kid. But I've drifted more and more in the direction of rarity. And rarity, as an example, like collecting Jokic. Jokic, I don't have the number exactly on the top of my head, but he has something around the order of 38 one of one parallels in total for his rookie season. In total, there's just 38 Jokic one of ones from 2015-16. That's base set, that's insert, that's memorabilia, that's autograph, that's all of it. And so that's a pretty interesting conceptual group that summing them all up, there's just these 38 one of ones. And so none of those one of ones in this concept are really one of ones. They're one of 38s. The fact that they're one of ones gains them access to this group of 38s, but they're one of 38s. And then within those 38, there's lots of ways to rank them. You can rank them based on how beautiful they look. You can rank them based on the brand premium and the prestige of the particular set that they come from. You can rank them based on the significance and the lineage, whatever those words might mean to you, and they mean different things to different people. But anyway, that's sort of the rarity. And I find myself drifting more and more towards rarity, even if I might find that Jokic has more beautiful inserts. I would say, certainly, like to call us back to this Mailday for a second, certainly this uniformity Jokic insert gold vinyl is more beautiful than some of his one of one rookies. And he has other inserts from later in his career that are more beautiful too. But beauty isn't the only factor. For me, it's started to not even become the main factor in some instances. In some instances, I keep gravitating more towards rarity. But at a certain point, aesthetics has to step back in. At a certain point, the aesthetic beauty has to step back in. I will not over index on rarity to the exclusion and the detriment of aesthetics. I won't go too far in that direction. There needs to be beauty. There needs to be aesthetic beauty. And let me make this point. This is what I've been building to. Let me make this point by way of two analogies. So the first analogy that I'd like to use here is a book. A book is a medium for expressing ideas. And in a similar way, a sports card is the expression of an idea. It's the expression of the legacy of an athlete and the beauty of a sport, and but more than that, it's the part where sports cards gain meaning and where sports cards become these objects of collecting is how a sports card sits in a vast network of a vast array of other sports cards and how they all relate to each other and how they compare to each other. And so that whole universe, that taxonomy of sports cards is part of what activates, I think, our collector brains and really compels us and fascinates us and engages us. So there's a sports card, in other words, is expressing an idea, not as clearly as a book is, but it's similar. It's fodder. It's meaning. Meaning is being expressed. Content is being expressed, just like is the case with a book. And in the case of a book, the quality of the writing, independent of the quality of the idea being expressed, the quality of the writing, the beauty of the prose, the satisfying and logically sound organization and structure of the ideas, and the organization of the buildup of the ideas, and all the way down to the length of sentences and the punchiness of sentences and sort of the poetry of certain sentences and the efficiency of sentences and avoiding using unnecessary words and properly using words and making it aesthetically pleasing. Like one of the tips that I remember that I got from a different writing context from somebody advising on how to write was after you've written something, read it out loud and see how it reads. And if it doesn't sound good to the ear, that sentence might need some tweaking. And so the way that the ideas, and remember, a book is all about the idea, but the way the idea is packaged and presented depends heavily on its aesthetic. It depends on how the sentences are phrased and structured and how they sound to the ear and how they're organized and how they flow and if they progress and if they build and if they rise and fall and follow the pattern and sort of the multiple act sequence that the human brain comes to expect. The aesthetic matters. And I would even go so far as to say that a book with great style and really pleasant prose, but a not so great idea, will be more enjoyed than a book that has a fantastic idea, but miserable prose and unintelligible writing and just of a style that is just misery and pain to read or to consume. And so obviously the sweet spot is when you have both, when you have a great idea and you have beautiful prose. The aesthetic and the quality of the content are both there. And same thing in a sports card. The ideal is when you have maximal rarity or a lot of rarity. That's sort of the content, the rarity being how the card relates to all the other cards in the universe of card collecting. So you have the content, which is top notch, and then you marry it with a top notch aesthetic. But you don't always get that, right? So to take it to the book metaphor, how much aesthetic can be sacrificed before the idea just gets lost? How much aesthetic can be sacrificed before the idea is just completely obscured and meaningless, even though it's a great idea. And it's the same thing with cards. How much aesthetic can we sacrifice before the rarity is just not important anymore? And the other comparison that I had, the other analogy or metaphor or whatever that I had was why I brought up this album cover artwork for Pink Floyd. Not that I'm a Pink Floyd fan or anything, but this is an iconic album cover. And it's music. The other comparison is music. Music also expresses an idea, just like a book does, just like a card does. Music expresses an idea. Music expresses some sort of abstract content, especially when music has lyrics. In that case, it's certainly expressing ideas and content. But not all. You could have the same lyrics, but pair them with beautiful music or compelling music or music with a great rhythm, and it will be much more palatable to the human mind than if those same lyrics were paired with a horribly offbeat instrumental or something that's out of key, or even if it's in key, something that's just ugly and not pleasant, a poor mix of instruments, something that's poorly structured, something that doesn't have symmetrical measures in terms of how long its verses are and its choruses are and the bridges. And I know this world well. I produced music professionally for a period of time, and I still am a big fan of music, and I love music. So the aesthetic in music and in music production too, I was very much an aesthetic guy. I was not so much into the theory of music, although obviously it's important, but I was really much more so on the aesthetic. Am I making something beautiful, something that really sounds beautiful, that moves you when you hear it? Because I was a producer, I wasn't doing lyrics or anything. I was composing the musical components and then mixing them and editing them, and all that stuff really puts a big emphasis on the aesthetic. And in music, it's the same as it is with a book or as it is with a card. The human mind is going to embrace it and tolerate it and enjoy it and come back to it if the aesthetic is there. The aesthetic is just simply something that cannot be avoided and it can't be ignored. And by the same token, the content matters too. The rarity matters. The idea expressed by the book matters. The poetry of the lyrics of the music matters. The idea behind it matters, and it matters to varying degrees. I think we could rank those in the category of book. The idea is the most important. I think with cards, that's the rarity of it is not quite as important. The rarity to a card is not quite as important as the idea is to a book. And then certainly in music, that's the lowest of these three, where you can have beautiful instrumental music that quite literally doesn't particularly convey any meaning, at least not meaning through words. So in music, you can index the furthest towards aesthetic. And in the world of the book, like many great academics have done, they've written almost unintelligible works that still we will suffer through because the meaning within them is worth gleaning. And then in between lies cards, and it's up to you to decide how much aesthetic is able to be sacrificed to if the rarity or if the content or if the meaning of the card is enough. Some people might say it's closer to a book, and you really only need a modicum of aesthetic. And others would say it's much closer to music, where you need a lot of aesthetic, or else it's just not going to work. So there are some thoughts on the aesthetics versus rarity topic. I don't suppose that I've solved it here, and I think I'll continue to wrestle with that idea. But anyway, let's move on out to the other part of the show. Let's get to some sports topics. So the first thing I want to talk about in sports is this idea, and this has come up on the crossover a few times recently, and just in sports discussions in general, it's sort of dawned on me. Sports commentary does not happen in isolation. It doesn't happen in a bubble. Sports takes that are offered, whether you're talking to your friends, whether you're listening to a podcast, whether you're hearing something said on TV, narrated during a game, all of these things are reactions to something else. Reactions to something else. So if somebody comes up to me, like I deal with this a lot with Luka, people will say, "Man, Luka, he's out of shape. He's not a leader. He doesn't play defense. This guy's overrated. And sometimes they don't say the overrated part, but the overrated part is everything. The overrated part is why they're saying the other stuff. They wouldn't be compelled to find these points to criticize and also to ignore all the great parts of his game if they weren't responding to something else that they felt was distorting the ideas or what they believe to be the truer observation. So, when somebody comes to me and says those things, like, obviously I love to poke them back and battle with them and stuff and just banter like good, ridiculous hardcore fans. I'm suddenly reminded of like shouting matches that I had with Boston Celtics fans during the NBA Finals at American Airlines Center. But anyway, not to go off on too much of a tangent there, but the idea here is that people are responding to things they heard. So like somebody might be watching TV and somebody might come on TV and say, Luka Doncic, man, we've never seen a guy like this. I mean, he can score better than Magic, he can pass better than LeBron, and he can rebound better than whoever. And then that person's going to watch that and say, oh, really? I don't think so. I think that's hyperbolic. That's way too much. No, he's not those things. He's good, but he is not those things. You know what he is? How about you guys talk about him being out of shape? How about you guys talk about how he doesn't play defense? On and on and on. And so they're not coming up with these criticisms in isolation. They are coming up with them because they want to balance the discussion, because they want to equalize it so that somebody is putting into the universe the amount of criticism that will balance the amount of excessive flowery praise that was also extreme, and then maybe approximate a middle ground. And of course, the chain of events doesn't stop there, because after that guy comes to me and says Luka's fat and he sucks, then I come back to him and I say, well, actually, did you know that he averages the third most points per game in NBA history? The only guys ahead of him are Wilt and MJ. And then I start thinking about that. And I'm like, man, could he pass Wilt and MJ? Each of those guys average 30.1 points per game. MJ's just a touch more. Luka's at like 28.8 points per game. And I'll take 15 minutes and now ChatGPT, it could take 2 minutes, but I'll do some math and I'll say how many games, let's suppose that Luka continues scoring at a 33 point per game clip, which is what he did in his most recent healthy season. How long would it take before his career points per game becomes first all time and surpasses Jordan and Wilt? Oh, that's going to happen in 2.5 seasons. Okay, so then now I've made this piece of content that I'm actually excited about. Like I got sent down this path to make this interesting piece of content, and then I put that out and I say, guess what? If Luka continues at this pace, he's going to be first in points per game all time, surpassing MJ, the GOAT. And even if he doesn't, he's still third. And I don't see that ever slipping. Like no matter what else happens in this guy's career, he is going down as one of the greatest scorers of all time. And so now I've responded to a person who is responding to someone else. And then somebody sees that and they say, referring to me, what is this guy doing? Talking about greatest scorer of all time. He's playing in an era of inflated stats. He's playing in pace and space. He's not dealing with the physicality that players from other generations had to deal with. And look at, this is a much more efficient era. Players score a lot more. And, look at like Michael Jordan was scoring a much larger percentage of his team's points than Doncic is. And yeah, Doncic might have scored 34 points per game or 33 points per game, but Wilt Chamberlain was scoring 50 points per game. So what are we doing here? This is a career average. This is wait until the back half of Luka's career and some of those numbers will go down and then what will you say? And so now we've got, another chain where somebody's replying to what I'm saying when I'm replying to what somebody else was saying. They were replying. Anyway, these chain reactions happen. And I just think it's really important to consider that anytime you hear anybody offering a sports opinion, it's very, very unlikely that opinion is coming out of thin air. But instead, it's much likelier that opinion is in response to something else, to some other piece of content that they heard, even if it's not directly, even if it's just being shaped by it. And then you can just imagine all these iterations, all these back and forths. And then ultimately we end up in these polar extremes. With that said, I would like to talk a little bit, because this guy's on the trade block, Kevin Durant. This was something I heard on a podcast a few weeks ago. I tweeted this. If your podcast rotation looks like mine, tomorrow you're going to encounter an utterance along the lines of Kevin Durant's team went 35-47 this year. And in fact, the Suns went 36-46. And the idea is that Kevin Durant is not impacting winning anymore. His team stunk, and they had pretty good players. I mean, he's playing with Devin Booker and a pretty good coach, a championship winning coach. And so the idea is like, hey, look, his team 10 less wins than losses. So, his impact is minimal. And I hear that and I say, is that true? And so I go and I look, and this was something that plagued the 2023 MVP discourse, which was Embiid versus Jokic, and Embiid won. And a lot of people were making arguments, even some of the smartest writers, they were making arguments based on what Philadelphia's team record is and what Denver's team record is. And there was one game that separated them. Philadelphia was one game better as a team. But if you took the extra 30 seconds to look at what the records were when each player played, Jokic had a much better record than Embiid did, and he had more wins. Better win percentage, more wins. It wasn't even close. With Durant, same thing. It's really the idea that his team went 36-46, therefore he didn't impact winning. The truth is not even close to that. So yeah, his team, the Suns, went 36-46, but when Durant was in the lineup, they were 33-29. They were 4 games over 500 when Durant was in the lineup. And when he wasn't, they were 3-17. So because of the way that this criticism against Durant was levied, his team being awful in the 20 games that he didn't play is being used as the main battering ram to knock him down. And it's actually offensive to common sense when you say, why are we holding the team record against him when they were certainly a viable playoff team when he was actually in the rotation? They were 33-29 when he played, and they were 3-17 when he didn't. So there's me replying to something that I heard. All right, let's move to the next topic here. Rick Carlisle. I have experience with Rick Carlisle because I was rooting for the Mavericks during all of Luka's seasons, and he was the coach for the first 2 or 3 of them or so. And I liked him. The thing that I didn't like about him, there were a few things I didn't like, which were he was a little quick to hit the emergency button and throw in JJ Barea to see if something could happen to fire up the team. or not just Barea, but like he would switch up stuff quick. He would hit the panic button really quick sometimes. And some people like that. I don't. And then also he would never use his challenges. He would always keep his challenges in his pocket. And sometimes that would really be a problem. But anyway, obviously a great coach. Obviously what he's done now, taking multiple teams very deep into the playoffs with very different rosters. It's just impressive. He's a really good coach. But anyway, not only is he a really good coach, but he is a very savvy operator. And he's very savvy with the media. And he can also be a total jerk to the media. There's a quote where he's just flippantly dismisses Nate Duncan of Dunked On. When Nate was just trying to have a chummy moment with him. And he said something along the lines of, can we get a question from a real reporter here? Which is rough too, because Nate Duncan is certainly one of the better people covering the NBA. But anyway, this is what Carlisle had to say in his Sunday press conference. So this was pre-game 5. It's awful, some of the things I've seen said about the officiating and about Scott Foster in particular. He is a great official. He's done a great job in these playoffs. And at the time he said that, I knew this was gamesmanship. And it's also the only way to answer the question. So obviously, and we're about to see why in a minute, Scott Foster has become a big topic in the NBA playoffs. Officiating has become a big topic in the NBA playoffs. That's about to become clear, especially after the next 2 segments that I do. That it's justified, that it is worth thinking about and looking into officiating in these particular playoffs, especially, and just thinking about how it's impacting and shaping outcomes of games. And so it became that this noise grew louder and louder. And then presumably somebody brought it up to Rick in media day, Rick Carlisle, Coach Carlisle, and he addressed it. And this is the only way to address it. I think this is, or not the only way, but this is a very, theoretically, this is a very clever way to address it, because he can come out and say, yeah, I think the refs are terrible. And then he puts his team at risk. You know, the refs might say, oh, really? He thinks we're terrible? All right, well, forget him. We're not going to anything that he wants. If he wants us to consider, hey, you know, when you look at this replay, think of this, or he wants to send notes to the league office or whatever, you know, this guy's, he's insulted us. He thinks we're not doing a good job, and we are out there doing the very best job we can. So this guy's being unfair to us. And no matter how much you try to take the human element out of things, it becomes very difficult to do that. So I think Carlisle is certainly clever enough, smart enough. I think he's a very smart and calculated person. He's smart enough to know that it's not going to get him anywhere, especially in the middle of the finals. But we'll see maybe how he really feels after the finals. It's not going to get him anywhere to start criticizing the officials in the middle of the finals. So he goes the other way. He says, you know what? I think this is unfair. And also in so doing, he calls attention to it nonetheless. He keeps it as a topic by getting very extreme and dramatic about it, which by his standard he did. He keeps it as a news story. Now his hands are clean. He's not criticizing the officials, but he puts it out there so that other people can reply to it and say, what does he mean? Like, no, this is actually wrong. And but you could still come back and say, you know what? You could say to me, Chris, you sound pretty jaded. You sound pretty pessimistic. I don't think Carlisle is this Machiavellian. I think he's just telling the truth. He also happened to mention that he's known Scott Foster for 30 years. And he's just telling the truth. There's nothing more to this. That's just how he really feels. If he felt like the refs are doing bad, he would say so, but he really does feel like they're doing a good job. And he made it to the finals after all, so the refs must not be too bad on him. And then game 5 happened. And something in particular in game 5 happened. So I don't believe Carlisle had received a technical foul throughout the entire finals. I'm not sure about the rest of the playoffs, but definitely I don't think he'd gotten a tech yet in the finals in the first 4 games. Within the first 6 minutes of game 5, he gets a tech berating an official, and it's tough to get a tech in the finals as a coach. So he must have been really going at him. He gets a technical foul for berating an official over a bad call, and it was a bad call. So which way is it, Coach Carlisle? Are these refs doing a great job, or are they doing such a bad job that you finally snapped and got a tech within the first few minutes of game 5? I'd place my money on the latter. All right, so let's talk about Scott Foster. Why was he such a topic? And here is the impact of Scott Foster on the 2025 NBA playoffs. When Scott Foster is officiating, the Oklahoma City Thunder are undefeated. They are 4-0 in the playoffs when he is officiating, and they have an average margin of victory of 24.3 points per game when Foster is officiating. Now, this stat was compiled after game 4 rather than game 5, so I'm going to just mentally update it right now for you guys. It says on screen Oklahoma City is 10-6 when anybody but Foster's officiating. Now it's 11-6. So Oklahoma City is 11-6 with a point differential. At that time it was plus 5.6. Now it's probably a little bit bigger than that. I think they won that. I don't know, but let's just call it plus 6. So Oklahoma City is now 11-6 with a point differential of plus 6 per game when anybody but Foster is officiating. So to run that down one more time, undefeated 4-0, and they win by more than 24 points per game, which is incredible when Foster is officiating. And when he's not, they are 11-6, which is still a good record, but it's not 4-0. And they have a point differential of plus 6, which is fine, but it's not plus 24. Plus 6, it's not even close to what they were in the regular season. The regular season, they were plus 12. So there's the increased level of competition in the playoffs has certainly had some level of course correction for them, as it does for all teams. And I can speak to, in particular, the Denver series. So you can go listen to a HOJ-Cast where I predicted that Denver would lose game 7 once I found out that Foster was the ref. In the Denver series, Oklahoma City had a record of 2-3, and they were minus 11 in those 5 games when anybody but Scott Foster was officiating. And when Foster was officiating, they were 2-0, and they had a point differential of plus 75. That is staggering. And I think there's a lot of contexts in life and professional life where if there were data samples that were that irreconcilable, there would need to be some explanation posited for why. And I do think there are explanations. So, for example, Matt Moore is a commentator that I like to listen to. He hosts Buckets, which is a terrific. It's a podcast about sports betting, and I'm not a sports bettor, but I listen to it because it's just terrific insight on trying to predict what's going to happen in games. And I learn a ton from listening to their analysts, and they're very good. And Matt Moore was sort of making the observation, especially during the Denver series. It's certainly not. We're not at the level to allege that refs are biased in favor of a team. It's not that. It's their officiating style. It's that the style of Foster in particular in these playoffs seems to be that smalls guarding bigs are allowed to commit a tremendous amount of contact without rising to the level of disadvantaging the offensive player. In other words, marginal contact. It takes a lot for a small guarding a big to make physical contact that rises to the level of exceeding marginal. And on the flip side, smalls guarding smalls on the perimeter, it takes a very little amount of contact before Foster is going to blow the whistle and say that this contact has disadvantaged the smaller player. And so it just so happens, and this was particularly true in the Denver series, it just so happens that Oklahoma City had smalls guarding bigs, smaller players guarding bigger players, particularly like when they made the adjustment of putting Caruso on Jokic. And in that case, I mean, there are clips galore on social media showing how Caruso was just bear hugging, mauling Jokic with no call. And then on the flip side, the perimeter players for OKC, but also for Denver too, any little contact against them, it was much likelier to draw a foul. So it can just be as simple as the officiating style of a particular ref is not in favor of any one team, but it just so happens that the way the teams match up and the way that the styles match up means that when this particular official is officiating, it is going to skew that way, not through any malintent, but just as a consequence, an unintended consequence of officiating style and interpretation of the rules. But anyway, those are the stats on Foster officiated games, and they are staggering. Something else staggering from these finals. I'm sure most people have noticed. I think if my browsing of social media is any indicator, it has been noticed that a lot of free throws are being awarded to Gilgeous-Alexander and to Jalen Williams. Not saying they don't deserve them. I'm not going that far, but I am saying that they're getting a lot of them, and people are noticing that they're getting a lot of them, and people are noticing that it's there's also a lot of offensive contact, push-offs being initiated by these offensive players, and they don't seem to generate offensive fouls, moving screens, etc. I mean, look, I'm not going to get into a breakdown here, but I'm just going to present a fact. I'm going to present a fact that I think is one of the stories of these finals, and nobody's covering it. And I get why it's not really what the league's proud of, but it's a fact, and it's happening, and I'm going to discuss it. And the fact is this: in the NBA Finals among guards, and when you think about guards, you think about Kobe Bryant, you think about Russell Westbrook, you think about Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, you think about Bob Cousy, Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, John Stockton, Jamal Murray, Chris Paul. You think about Reggie Miller, Allen Iverson, Dwayne Wade. Of course, you think about Clyde Drexler. Of course, you think about Michael Jordan, John Havlicek. You think about these players, some of which are some of the greatest foul artists, as I believe they were once called. Some of them even, like Dwayne Wade, played during a highly controversial 2006 NBA Finals where a lot of free throws were awarded. And then I don't need to go into all the controversy surrounding that. But anyway, among all these guards to have played in the NBA Finals, the two leading guards through 5 games of the 2025 NBA Finals in the history of the NBA Finals, the two guards with the most free throw attempts per minute, and we do it by per minute rather than per game, because players, like for example, Jerry West is a guy on this list. He in his NBA Finals career, he played 43 minutes per game. And that was a slightly different era. Whereas, someone like Dwayne Wade plays 39 minutes per game. Allen Iverson played 47 minutes per game. John Havlicek, over 48 minutes per game average in the NBA Finals. So we can't do per game because, like, literally a guy like John Havlicek is playing 33% more minutes than a guy like J-Dub who's averaging 36 minutes per game. So we're going to do per minute rather than per game to make this an apples-to-apples comparison. The guards who are averaging the most free throws per minute, first place and second place, are both on the 2025 Oklahoma City Thunder. And Jalen Williams is first among all guards in NBA history in free throw attempts per minute. 0.26 free throw attempts per minute in the NBA Finals. That is first among guards in NBA history. And Gilgeous-Alexander is right behind him in second at 0.25 free throw attempts per minute in the NBA Finals. Once again, this is a phenomena that merits an explanation. How is it possible that these two guys are drawing the most fouls that end up resulting in free throws in the history of the NBA Finals among perimeter players, among guards? And the gap is big. So you might look and say, well, J-Dub's at 0.26 and SGJ is at 0.25. But, Michael Jordan and Dwayne Wade are at 0.21. I mean, that's just a difference of 0.05. Well, not exactly. Relative to MJ's total of 0.21 free throw attempts per minute, Jalen Williams 0.26. That's an increase of 25% over Michael Jordan. J-Dub is drawing 25% more foul shots per minute than Michael Jordan. That is a spectacular statistic. And then finally, now that I've done the ref bit, which people hate, and I understand that, but nobody's talking about it, and I want somebody to have said something about it at some point. Let's get down to Finals MVP, which is a very compelling metric, because I think things between, as we're going to see, things between J-Dub and SGA are pretty competitive. And there's a lot of the line for SGA with this Finals MVP. So SGA won regular season MVP. If he wins Finals MVP, he will join currently the club of 24 players in NBA history to have 2 or more total MVPs. Total MVP being defined as either a regular season MVP or a Finals MVP. He will join a list of 24. He will make it a list of 25 to have 2 or more combined Finals MVPs and regular season MVPs. And here's some of the people that he will become tied with. Steve Nash, 2 regular season MVPs. Dirk Nowitzki, 1 regular season, 1 Finals MVP. Kawhi Leonard, 2 Finals MVPs. That's the company that he joins. And some of you may be aware that I really am partial towards the total MVP metric as a way to rank players. And he immediately joins the top 25 players all time. So a Finals MVP for him here, and you never know when teams are going to get back or somebody gets injured. I mean, we were all Nuggets fans. We were all certain that the Nuggets were going to be almost done with a three-peat right now after they went 16-4 in the 2023 NBA Finals and rolled to a championship. And then you get a little bit of roster shifting. You run into the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have a 20-point comeback in the second half of the Game 7, one of the flukiest or greatest comebacks you'll ever see in playoff history. Jamal Murray was dealing with an injury for the early part of that series. This year, Russell Westbrook's playing with a broken hand. Aaron Gordon's calf thing happens. You still go up big in the first quarter of Game 7, but Gordon can't play, and you deteriorate. Plus, officiating styles impact the outcome. Anyway, Gilgeous-Alexander here is on the precipice of joining a very elite group, but he's up against, first of all, you have to win the series to Finals MVP almost. Except with one exception, which is the very first Finals MVP of all time, which was Jerry West. Finals MVP has always gone to a player on the winning team. So you still have to win the series. And if you do win the series, you have to beat out J-Dub. And so looking at Finals MVP, and I just noticed that I pulled up, I went a little too far back for Finals MVP. I really wanted to look at what the standing was for Finals MVP after Game 5. So bear with me. Here we go. So after Game 5, the odds for Finals MVP, Gilgeous-Alexander way out in front, -550. But here comes J-Dub, plus 700. Now, if we look at net points, which is Dean Oliver's advanced stat, which I don't think any voters have access to or even understand how it works, or even understand generally how it might work, which is the category that I can put myself in. I generally get how it works, but I don't know how it works under the hood, and he hasn't published how it works under the hood. But I've taken from what he's explained, I've compared it to other advanced metrics. I do know how they work. And I have a general idea of how it works and general idea of what he's trying to do. He's trying to figure out how much of a particular margin of victory or loss that each individual player contribute to. And then he's using, adjusted plus minus. He's using box score. He's using historical models. He's doing a lot. But anyway, in net points, Gilgeous-Alexander is in first at plus 16.5, but it's close. Siakam is second at plus 12.6. That can swing quickly. Over the course of the playoffs, I think Oliver published that Gilgeous-Alexander is around like a plus 3.5 per game for the playoffs. So, one game can give you a big swing. Jokic had a plus 20 game during the second round. Kawhi had like a plus 13 or a plus 14 game. Gary Trent had like a plus 14 game. Jamal Murray had a game of that level. It's like a player can have a big game and all of a sudden their net points can just explode. But so far in the series, it's pretty clustered together. Like I said, SGA at plus 16.5, Siakam at plus 12.6. Siakam has flipped the script. In the Eastern Conference Finals, his net points were unimpressive and Halliburton's were very impressive. Now it's flipped. Now Siakam is having the much more positive impact per this metric. Caruso is third at plus 7.3, and then J-Dub is fourth at plus 6. Plus 6.0. If you're wondering where Halliburton is, he's in dead last among the players who have odds at minus 10.1. It's been a brutal finals for him in terms of net points, especially considering the Eastern. Especially considering of all the conference finalists from 2025, he had by far the best net points. But now in the finals, that's reversed. And so you look and you say, well, Caruso is very interesting. But they're not going to vote him for Finals MVP. But net points says he's lingering. He's a dark horse. J-Dub could get votes for Finals MVP. J-Dub is somebody that more realistically Gilgeous-Alexander needs to worry about, especially because starting with Game 4 as an adjustment to Carlisle's defensive strategy, the Oklahoma City Thunder started resting Gilgeous-Alexander more frequently, taking him out during the first quarter, which they normally didn't do, giving him more breaks, and also shifting the offensive burden, at least during certain lineups, shifting it to J-Dub, and he's the number one option. And that played itself out when he scored 40 points in the most recent game. He led all scorers, highest scoring game by any player in the NBA Finals this year. And so J-Dub is there at plus 6. J-Dub started weak. He's had a few weak games that were weaker than any of the games that SGA had, but he's also had some really strong games too. He's, plus 10.5 behind SGA, but, if SGA has like a minus 2, minus 3 net points game and J-Dub has like a plus 8 net points game, that could put J-Dub ahead just through one game. So it's conceivable that it could happen. It's not likely, but it's conceivable that it could. But is that the right way to analyze Finals MVP? Saw a really interesting post from a guy named Tyler Britton on Twitter. He said there's a lot of revisionism. He's going to compare. He's going to talk about the 2024 Finals MVP. I'm going to take his approach and apply it to 2025. He says for the 2024 Finals MVP, the series total stats will say Tatum deserved it and Jaylen Brown didn't exist, particularly in games 4 and 5. But that's why it's important. You have to look at the award in the context of the series. He says Boston went up 3-0, and at that point, Jaylen Brown was averaging 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists on 55% shooting. And you compare that to Tatum's 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists on 36% shooting. So he goes on to say, of course, there's more context to be applied, like Tatum's value as a playmaker and unlocking Boston's defensive scheme. But at no point after Game 3 was anybody arguing against Jaylen Brown for Finals MVP. So he's sort of saying, look, Boston won the first 3 games. That determined the finals. It was just a matter of when will they get the fourth. Jaylen Brown was better than Jason Tatum during those 3 wins. Therefore, Brown had the momentum. And if you just look at averages, you're going to miss that nuance. So I said, what if we apply that to the 2025 NBA Finals? And so I'm going to take his lens and just shift it a little bit. Basically what he's saying, and it's an interesting argument, he's saying throw away the losses. Forget the fact that Tatum was terrible during that Game 4 blowout, which is one of my favorite games I've ever attended. Personally, was that particular Game 4 blowout where Dallas beat Boston, I think, by 38 points. And my brother was there, and he got on the Jumbotron. There's an amazing video of that you can see on his page sometime if you want. It's on a Stiff Arm Wax, the Instagram page. I digress. Anyway, the idea here is like, just forget the losses. Why are we comparing players and averaging their averages over the course of a finals when who cares if they were good in a loss? The team lost. Let's just see who was most responsible for winning when the team won. Because at the end of the day, they won the finals because they won 4 games, and the losses, however many losses they get, 1, 2, 3, however many, who cares? Forget those games. Those games didn't impact them winning the finals. You could score 100 points, but if your team lost, you didn't impact winning enough. As a tautological truth, whatever you did, it wasn't enough to get your team to win. So forget what happens in losses. Let's just focus on what happens in wins. And if we do that in the 2025 NBA Finals, in Oklahoma City's 3 wins going into Game 6, Gilgeous-Alexander is averaging 33 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists. He has a true shooting percentage of 61, and his plus-minus per game is plus 4.67. Jalen Williams, in the 3 wins, 29 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game. True shooting percentage also 61, and a plus-minus per game of plus 6.33. So he's got a modest edge in plus-minus per game. In terms of points and rebounds and assists, Gilgeous is at 42 PRA, and then J-Dub is at 39. So Gilgeous has a modest edge there, and true shooting percentage are the same. So the statistical profile of PRA, plus minus, and true shooting percentage is roughly a wash. So then throw in the fact that Jalen Williams is also counted on to be a significant defensive presence, similar to a Jaylen Brown. And SGA is not. So then you say, well, let's take into consideration the defensive side. It's tough to sort of separate out their plus minus just because they play a lot together, but J-Dub does have an edge there. And then Gil just has the edge in scoring and in assists, and then J-Dub has the edge in rebounding. So look, I think that mitigates towards J-Dub as being the more impactful player in wins. And the thing that sort of bears that out is if you look in losses, Gilgeous-Alexander is 31 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. So pretty comparable to his 30, 33, and 6. True shooting percentage of 55%, so a little bit worse. But J-Dub is way worse in losses. I mean, Gilgeous is pretty comparable in wins and losses. In losses, J-Dub is 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. So, scoring drops by 7. And true shooting percentage of 49, that's 12 percentage points lower than his true shooting in wins. So what that looks like is, hey, when J-Dub plays poorly, they lose. When J-Dub plays well, they win. And SGA is more or less a constant across all the games. So who's more valuable out of those? Who's impacting winning more? And you can only really tease out that picture if you separate out wins and losses, which Tyler Britton sort of gave me the idea to do that. Now, do I think that voters are going to look at this granular of a level? No, it took me like 20 minutes to calculate those stats. None of these people are going to take that much time to do that. But what these stats might be representing, what they might be channeling, is the idea that there is a sense ever since Oklahoma City made the adjustments to focusing J-Dub more on offense, and then he goes off and he has this 40-point game, and it just seems like Oklahoma City's momentum, and they've won 2 straight, and it's all happening in harmony with J-Dub's rise as an offensive force in this series, as an offensive menace, as a guy capable of scoring 40 points in an NBA Finals game, as a guy who shoots the most free throw attempts per minute in NBA Finals history among guards. You can sort of see like there's might be a feel, a sentiment, a sense, a sweeping sense that we have a Jaylen Brown situation on our hands here, where a guy who's not the number one option on offense traditionally and who is not really seen as the best player on the team is having a slightly better series, especially in the games where it matters. So something to keep an eye on. I think it's certainly something to keep an eye on. But the odds tell the story. Gilgeous is a huge favorite. And look, the guy's averaging over 30 points a game in the NBA Finals. Not many have done that. All right, final thing here to wrap this up on Finals MVP. Since I was so fascinated by the net points stuff, at like 4 o'clock in the morning a few nights ago, I went and I just calculated what was the total net points in wins and losses. What was the total net points per player in the last 5 NBA Finals? And so I did 2024, which was the weirdest outcome for sure. Doncic was plus 15.6. He had the best net points in that series. Porzingis was second at plus 10.6, and he missed several games. So he was like very impactful in the few games that he played. Al Horford was third. Daniel Gafford was fourth. Derek White was fifth. Holiday was sixth. Tatum was seventh, minus 2.3. Derek Lively, who had a pretty tough series, he was minus 3.0. And then you get to Jaylen Brown, minus 5.2. Remember, on the series, not filtering out wins and losses, but on the full series, Jaylen Brown, minus 5.2 net points. PJ Washington, minus 7, and Kyrie, minus 13.8. Kyrie's first 2 games were like minus, I don't know, I think getting close like minus 25 or minus 30 combined in just those 2 games. 2023 NBA Finals. Jokic won going away, plus 43.1 net points in that 5-game finals. Aaron Gordon was second at plus 12.9. Jimmy Butler was third at plus 1.2. Jamal Murray minus 1.3. In the 2022 NBA Finals, Curry won plus 29.4. Robert Williams III, Time Lord, was second, plus 24.8. I was really interested to see how highly he continued to score game after game as I was tabulating these. If you're interested, some of the other people, Draymond was minus 2.4. Clay was minus 13.8. Tatum was minus 15.9. Truly atrocious, but not as atrocious as Derek White, who was minus 25.6 in that series. They really let Time Lord down. 2021 NBA Finals. Giannis just absolutely lapping the field, plus 41.3 in net points. Second best was CP3 at plus 8.1. And then we get to the 2020 NBA Finals. In those finals, LeBron won plus 40.7. He pulled it out in the end. Going into the game 6, Jimmy Butler had the lead in net points in that series, but LeBron had a masterful game 6. Butler finishes second in that series in net points, plus 35.3. Anthony Davis came in third at plus 31.4. Tyler Hero was a minus 24.3. which I think was the worst net points. Oh, no, sorry. Derek White was a little bit worse in 2022, minus 25.6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The most recent 5 NBA Finals for you. All right, guys. This thing has somehow, this podcast has gone on for more than an hour. So I'm going to call it quits here. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon.